Hello. You can still see my face right here. Yeah. So the way this is a little video used to explain everything, to walk you through and figure out how we can take notes even when we are not in front of each other, or even if we are always virtual. So I am not going to be on camera the entire time. I'm actually going to switch, and I'm going to switch to writing with you. But I wanted to give you a little glimpse of this is what we are doing. Today we are looking at the Northern Colonies, or the New England Colonies, and our language objective is I can explain the differences between the regions of colonial America using a graphic organizer, a video guide, and a color-coded map. So, things you are going to want to have out with you. First things first, you're going to want to have this graphic organizer with you. Okay. I have mine here. Should be in your binder, social studies section. The other thing you are going to want is your map, which we glued into your binder last week already, or taped into your binder last week, that we are color coding. I have color coded all of these videos so that they match the colors that I'm using. You can color code them whatever color you would like, but everything that I do will match those color codes so you have an idea of what things are what and where they go. All right, enough of this. We are going to go through, and I'm going to start jotting things down on here as well as on the screen so you can see and write along with me. All right, so again, what you're going to need your map. Let me get my lightsaber out. Lightsaber. You're going to need your 13 Colonies map that is in your binder and that graphic organizer that I just showed you. If you're working virtually, you can obviously put that graphic organizer in Notability or type in it as a doc. That is up to you. All right, so the first thing I want to start with is setting up our map and coloring in the states that we should. We have all done this one together. So this is basically just a practice for me to show you what it's going to look like for the rest of them. Our states are here. I'm going to color with you. I should have Maine filled in. I should have New Hampshire, down to Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. So everything but New York. So everything north of New York. And I'm going to color mine in because I'm in a highlighter mode so you can still see all the lines. Please pardon my sloppy coloring. I do not have a fancy stylus. I have one of the rubber ended ones. So this is what I got. This is what we're working with. All right, so our map should be set up. If at any point during these notes I am going too fast, pause me. Pause this video. You have the ability to stop me and catch up at any point that you need. So I'm going to move forward. If you need a minute to color in, go ahead and stop me. Otherwise, let's go. All right, so I'm pretty certain every class got to this, but in case you didn't, also because you have a new note sheet, you're going to have to write these in with me as well. Unfortunately, my note sheet does not go in order. So technically, we are going to start in the second box down in the New England column. And we're going to start talking about geography and climate. This should be a little bit of a review because we've already talked about this one. But the geography and climate of the New England colonies, or the Northern Colonies, one thing was they had really, really poor soil. It was not great for farming. It was very cold. Very cold. They had really large coasts, though. Remember, if we looked on the map, and they had very large coastline. That whole edge here, remember, all next to the ocean, that's our coast. And they had plenty of rivers and mountains. Rivers and mountains. I love these little maps that start talking about what things look like everywhere. So you can see sort of what resources they were dealing with. And we have one of these for every colony, which is great. So we have things like fishing and whaling. We have timber, so trees, natural resources, shipbuilding, and then cattle as well. So that is their geography and climate. Next, let's talk about their economy. How did they make their money? So economic activities. We already talked about this, but they were not farmers. Not farming. They barely made enough food to feed themselves. So farming was not a very profitable thing for them to do. They couldn't sell it. So what did they do instead? They traded, and they traded a lot. They also used their coastline, that ocean, to fish and whale. Fish and whale. And they also used the timber to build ships. Build ships. So throughout this whole process, we could see just in our map up here, they were building ships, right? Ships. They fished and whaled. They used that timber, and they traded with that big ocean. So I'll get those marks off. Ships. All right, let's move on. All right, so let's get talking about the types of settlers that are there in the New England colonies. The types of settlers that we saw were Puritans. Puritans. And remember, those are the people who believed in like the most pure religion. They originally left. They left. Their push factor for leaving was they felt that the religion wasn't as pure as what they wanted. And then also we had the Pilgrims, which you probably had something to do with them in elementary school, dressing up for the first Thanksgiving. You can see the image over here has a bunch of people in what looked to be traditional Pilgrim clothing, what you might have dressed up as if you were doing a play in elementary school about the first Thanksgiving. Okay. Next up, let's talk about religious groups. So like I already mentioned, we had the Puritans. And they wanted a more pure religion. And that's why they left. They felt like it wasn't as pure as it could be. And what that led to was very strict laws. They tended to believe that if they did anything wrong ever in their life or went against the church at any point in their life, that they would then not have a happy afterlife. Like it was very black and white to them. And again, if I am ever going too fast, pause me. I know that I'm trying to get these notes down for you. Just pause me, stop me, so you have that time to catch up. So let's talk about their early forms of government. So one of the earliest forms of government that took place in the New England colonies was on the Mayflower. So what they actually did was they signed what was called the Mayflower Compact. And what that basically was a document that said they would all be loyal to the king, and that they would basically agree to work with one another. It was like a very, very early form of government. It was a very early form of like a declaration. But in general, they were all saying that they would stay very loyal. Ooh, can't spell today. Loyal to England. That no matter what happened over here, they would still stay loyal to England. All right, so now let's talk about their interactions with the Native Americans. This one I'm going to tell you right now, you are probably going to want to write small. You could also take a piece of paper and staple it to the back of this graphic organizer if you're someone who does not like to write small. I have a total of 4 bullet points here. So first things first, in the New England colonies, they were friendly with a group called the Wampanoag. And I'm going to abbreviate with, so I used my short form. Wampanoag. So they were friendly with this group of Native Americans. In fact, this is where you have Native Americans. Again, I'm abbreviating so my writing can be a little smaller. The Native Americans taught the colonists how to hunt and farm. And then in return, the colonists traded things with the Native Americans. They traded. So this is actually where we get the story of the first Thanksgiving, is this idea of the Native Americans helping out and having a really friendly, good relationship with the colonists. However, as history tells us, not all of these good things continued. And what happened was they became unfriendly when the colonists wanted more land. They wanted to expand. So unfriendly when expanding. But frankly, here's the sad truth, is that the colonists had guns, and that improved their odds of getting what they wanted. So they became unfriendly. The colonists had guns, which means the colonists got what they wanted and pushed the Native Americans out. Okay. I'll give you a second just to jot those down, but remember, if I ever went too fast, feel free to pause me. All right, lastly, we're going to talk about some important people and some important places. I'm actually going to start with places. So some important places to know from here are Plymouth. We have Plymouth, which you have probably heard of before, and it is also labeled on our map. It's off that coast of Massachusetts, as well as Boston and Salem. Plymouth, Boston, and Salem. So Plymouth and Boston were both major trading cities. Salem was right on the coast as well, so that helped. Salem is also probably one of the more famous, or maybe infamous is the better word. Due to the Puritan religion, that is where we see the Salem witch trials, which we are going to talk about in a few weeks, in a week and a half, something like that. We'll talk about it soon. So those are some important places, and let's jot down a couple key people. So the first person is Roger Williams. Roger Williams. And he founded Rhode Island. I'm using the state abbreviations. If you'd like to write it out, go ahead. Rhode Island is our little green one down here. Then we have Anne Hutchins. And Anne Hutchins was important, not because she founded a state, but because she actually advocated for women's rights. She was not a fan of how little rights women had and how little say they had in all of this, especially in some of the more religious communities. So she actually spoke out about how men were controlling all of this and had all the say, and that wasn't right. Lastly, we have Thomas Hooker. Thomas Hooker. He actually left some of the more religious colonies and founded his own. He didn't like how strict the religion was. Left because of religion. And because we were in this new land, they had the ability, because he didn't like what was going on, he actually just left and started his own city in his own little town because he didn't like what was going on and how religiously dictated everything was. All right. At this point, we have reached the end of our notes for today. So make sure you clip your note sheet back in your binder, keep it safe, and yeah, we'll jump on into the middle colonies next time.